All right, we'll go ahead and get started then. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Grace Schroeder from Yahara Software, and I'd like to welcome you to today's conversation, The Future of Tech in the Lab, Low-Code and Artificial Intelligence. A couple of quick notes. As you're watching, feel free to submit your questions via the chat and Q&A features for our speakers to address. Today's presentation is being recorded, and a copy will be shared with all of you. And at the end, you'll be prompted to fill out a quick survey. Please take a moment to do so to help us continue to produce great content like today's presentation. I want to welcome our three fantastic speakers for today. We've got Grace Schroeder, Adam Steinert, and James Smagala. Grace is the founder and CEO of Slingr. She is transforming how labs and healthcare organizations work by creating low-code solutions that replace rigid, off-the-shelf software with agile, custom systems. She's all about making automation smarter, more flexible, and more cost-effective. Next is Adam Steinert, the Chief Technology Officer at Yahara Software. Adam has a fascinating background that blends biology and software engineering. He's led the development of groundbreaking solutions in bioinformatics, transportation, and more. And he's also been integrating AI and machine learning into cutting-edge tools for scientific operations. Last but not least, we've got James Smagala with us today, who brings a unique combination of wet lab expertise and software development. From designing assays like PCR and DNA sequencing to building globally used software tools for data analysis, James is all about streamlining and improving lab processes. Before we get the show on the road, I just want to throw a couple of poll questions out to you. Let's go ahead and pull up our first poll for today. So we want to know which of the following outcomes is most important for your organization when exploring AI or low-code solutions. Is it faster process optimization, better data insights and decision-making, improved collaboration between teams and departments, reduced reliance on IT or technical teams, or greater operational flexibility and scalability? We'll just give you a minute to decide.
Please answer honestly. Your answers will be used to shape this discussion.
Or against you.
Anything you vote can and will be used against you.
We can tell the Law and Order fans on the call.
All right, I'm going to give you 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, ending the poll, sharing results. Biggest leader was better data insights and decision-making.
We got some votes for automation and some flexibility and scalability as well. All topics I think we might get to touch today.
All right, just one more question, and then I'm gonna zip it. Second question for you. Which of these AI or low-code use cases are you most interested in learning more about? Is it automating manual repetitive tasks, streamlining lab workflows and reducing delays, integrating AI into predictive analytics and forecasting, enhancing data visualization and reporting, or something else? Go ahead and share that in the chat. Right. Gonna go ahead and share in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, ending the poll, sharing results.
Analytics and forecasting is our topic for the day. Got a clear front runner. If we need to pivot during the middle of this, you are welcome to ask us questions in chat. I see at least one hand raised. We are happy to hear from you, but don't really have any way to communicate other than you got to type to us. With that, Ray, thank you for the introduction. Grace, thank you for joining us. Let's kick ourselves off a little bit here. We are so excited to have you all with us. We're doing a slightly different format than we've done in the past. A lot of times it's Adam and I doing a little more formal presentation. We're doing something that's slightly less formal. We've got Grace, she's good on her feet, and she's got a lot of insights in this domain. And so what we're going to do is open up the floor a little bit, have a little bit more of an open conversation, talk through some of the stuff in the low code laboratory automation, AI, analytical insights space, see where we get today. Again, as we go along, we are more than happy to take questions from you. Grace, welcome.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to your forum. And I am excited because at the root of our company, Slingr, we are a low-code application platform, and we enjoy working with services firms that have domain expertise, and yours in particular in the lab space, because we too have found a home in the labs space based on our ability to deliver customized solutions. And we have found in only these last 18 months that labs are becoming very dynamic businesses, and they are expanding their capabilities to include, things that are adjacent to their core lab testing. And for example, we work in environmental testing, which extends to cannabis testing, which extends to water and food testing. And what we found is that off-the-shelf products aren't really serving those businesses. So laboratory people are scientists, and they want the process to work according to the way they want it to work, with their discipline, with their sign-offs, with their validations. And we are the only solution that they find. And believe me, many people don't want to build a custom solution. And then a year after they choose something off the shelf, many times they come back to us and say, okay, you were right, it didn't work. For the same amount of money now, working with companies like Yahara, we can scope and define exactly the way you want your lab to work, and design a custom solution at the same cost with more flexibility as you're accustomed to paying with off the shelf. So that's where, I'd like to open the discussion, because I know, especially in the area of AI, everybody sort of knows intrinsically that they have a lot of data. They've got millions of tests over many years, and how do they use that information to improve the outcomes and the quality of their tests going forward? And that's the conversation I think we're here to open, because I think between Yahara and Slingr, we can create like a stair-step approach to, we don't have to forklift upgrade everything. We're not here to have a $250,000 engagement to make you torture everybody in your lab. We're here to say, let's start somewhere, and solve the things that intrinsically are going to drive value for your clients.
I'm curious. So you kind of touched on this, and as we kind of wade into that topic, Grace, you noted that potential clients might come to you. You talk to people that, well, they're resistant to doing something that's custom, but then maybe they come back around. What are some of the key areas there of sort of resistance? Why do you feel like people think that going custom or going low code isn't a viable solution?
Most laboratory owners, directors, et cetera, aren't natively technology people. And the history of, mainframe to custom code to off the shelf has driven people to a particular behavior, which is, hey, I need this automation. Let me go stack up, 3 or 4 providers, see what their checkboxes are. Like, you do this and this and this. Well, how much is it per seat or per test? And then they just decide. The decision process is that rhythm. And the result of that is that you are getting an application that doesn't work exactly the way you want it to. So there's always that last mile of functionality, and people then start to grow the spreadsheet department to sort of accommodate that last mile. And then the spreadsheet department becomes more popular than this application you've invested in. And then you've got both the expense of the application and the spreadsheet department, and you think there must be a better way. So we get a lot, I call them boomerangs, a lot of people that we talk to, and then they go down the packaged product path, and then a year and a half later, they come back because it didn't work. And I don't, it's not like the I told you so thing. I understand it. It's the way people are used to making decisions. And our job is to say, like, hey, if you're gonna pick people to trust, why not trust lab software experts and a low-code platform with lab expertise to be your team, to take you to the promised land of AI-infused analytics and workflows and whatever you encounter going forward, versus the old way of, hey, you know what, I got a vendor. Let me just pick this vendor who has this product, because that will not work in the long run.
And I think I want to start to draw a little bit of a distinction here. One of the things that we've had success with from the folks we've worked with at Yahara is differentiating the hardcore operations must be conducted a certain way parts of the laboratory. And those tend to be well supported by the existing pieces of software in this space. A lot of labs are already going to have a LIMS system, and that drives how you log in a sample, test it, and report it. And that's good. You want that rigidity when you must follow process. I think what we're hearing from some of our new friends in the audience, just on Ray's couple of quick poll questions, though, is where people are struggling is as soon as you break out of that very small, very rigid box where you are forced to follow that process, you don't have the analytics and the insight and the greater operational capacity. Is that data there in your LIMS system? Maybe, or maybe you're not even gathering it all that effectively. And so rather than saying, don't buy a LIMS system, I think what we're going to start telling you here a little bit is think about building around your LIMS system. Think about building your software ecosystem across your whole laboratory and look at what problems you want to solve. And particularly if you've got operational analytics or deeper scientific insights that you want to get to, that an accessory piece of software may offer you flexibility and opportunity that a traditional LIMS type rigid system just won't.
100%,
Yeah, go.
100%. And we love workhorse systems that do their jobs well. We never try to replace those unless they're extraordinarily expensive for what they do, right? So our first move in general is to integrate with any systems that companies believe are working well for them. And in that way, we can do a sort of an improvement, a modernization without breaking any sort of underlying processes that are well worn and that work. And so if you picture it, and if I were, you know, a better marketing person, I'd have a nice diagram to show you, but I'm not. If you picture it, you have this, you know, a base layer of underlying workhorse systems. You put in a low-code platform like Slingr on top of it, and then you can say, hey, Slingr, I need to augment with these functionalities, with these integrations, because Slingr makes it very easy to integrate. I need to expose an API, an application programming interface, so that other people that need this data in a secure way can get it. I need this to all be HIPAA compliant. And I need a services firm like Yahara that can go in and say, you know what? This is where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. This is where your validations need to be better, the automated validations. So you've got this sample processing, but maybe the validation sophistication isn't enough for you. Maybe there's notifications and reviews that need to happen that don't exist in a native system. And those are the types of things that we can augment. And then when you get to, hey, how do I route some of this information through any one of the AI or machine learning models that are out there? How do I do that easily? That layer, the low code layer, is the layer that can help you do that. So like we do everything from augmenting existing systems to replacing them to transforming a very large, complicated spreadsheet into an actual application. And so we can meet people where they are. It's not like hey, you got to buy a whole thing and, go with God.
You've called out the spreadsheets a couple of times now. It's a theme we've hit in some of our past webinars. That spreadsheet department, as you called it, that is part of your software. You may not realize it, and it wasn't deliberate, and it's not carefully managed, but it is part of how you operate your laboratory. There's a lot of opportunity there for improvement, for stabilizing, for turning that into something that is integrated and repeatable and reusable as you go. What are some of the success stories that you've had in that domain? Is there a good story we can tell here?
Well, one of my favorites is actually, there's, two pieces to this. One, a laboratory that has manufacturing embedded, that has a lot of ERP requirements. So we bolt the Slingr platform on top of a LIMS to enhance it with ERP types of functionality, and that can even include, okay, like how do I labs is part of my process, right? I have to go through this testing process, but then I'm also including these ingredients in a number of different inventory items, and these items can include multiple inputs and multiple outputs, which today most ERP does not handle. So you can actually do these calculations to determine your cost of goods that aren't supported in traditional ERP. And stupid, hey, I'm putting these 3 ingredients into a bucket. I need to create out of that bucket, I'm just selling the raw thing as one item, then I'm creating 6 other downstream items. Based on the outcome, the output, the yield, I need to now calculate the cost of goods. This does not happen in traditional ERP. So it can be as flexible as you need it to be, and especially where pennies matter, where the money's in the inches. These are the types of measurements that a low-code platform can deliver without just disrupting your entire organization.
I liked, Grace, how you phrased it, this area that people find themselves in as, as the software being able to meet them where they are. James, the manifestation of like the Excel spreadsheet that runs the lab is really the sort of culmination of the requirements that everybody didn't know about, that didn't
Yes.
understand, and became sort of the glue point for really what binds the whole operation together and makes things work. So I think what we're seeing, as you look across, the technology landscape these days, with the low-code platforms and the movement towards, software products that are geared towards integration and making it very easy to do at a sort of like block level, right? We have a lot of like drag and drop, this integration, that integration, putting it all together to create some of these automations that classically might have like lived in an Excel spreadsheet, obscure, opaque processes that become accessible, to non-programmers, to those without a background in sort of big software development projects, and at a level that's easy to, it's easily accessible, right? If you've got, your yearly budget, right, for a, big ticket piece of software and you've missed something, there are tools to be able to come back and get that. Whereas before you might not have been able to do that without, some serious digging. And it calls back to the audience poll results that we had just seen, where everybody's worried about how do we pull all of this together.
Well, look, I love, our clients that finally decide they have to get off the spreadsheets. I highly advocate people to run on these spreadsheets as long as they can. If they work, and you're not suffering, additional costs that you have to drive down to your customers, keep using that. When customers come to us and say, you know what, we have to get off it. This is the point at which they've created the spreadsheets with the macros that are so complicated. They live in mortal fear that somebody's going to delete something or a formula they haven't protected enough that it's going to destroy the whole company, the whole company's financials. And it's at that point where they say, you know what, we have to go, we have to move to an actual application. The good news is that if somebody has their processes and calculations in a spreadsheet, it's very easy that's like the perfect requirements document for us. It's very easy for us to take that and transform it into an actual application. And then the entire challenge becomes, well, how do we move the organization so that we can transform it to an application and make sure the people are participating so that they include everything that they wish the spreadsheet could do, and that the change management is not disruptive to the organization. And that it's a journey, but at the outcome of this, like my whole evangelism is around, you need a team, and it doesn't have to be expensive. These types of engagements cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in the past. They no longer do. Today, almost every company needs a technology team. They need to throw all these challenges over the wall to people that they trust, who will work with them step by step by step with the stakeholders internally or the lead person in the client organization to improve things forever. It's not you're buying a product. It's you have a full-scale development team at the cost of a product. And that's what's going to keep you competitive, keep your costs low, and keep your margins high.
And I think that cost piece also starts to speak to the opportunities to pull AI in on some of this. There are automation opportunities that are available now that just weren't a couple of years ago. And that's in part due to we've got a slightly different set of technologies available that do something different than traditional software. That's another place I definitely want to go with this audience. I think what we saw from those poll results is that people are starting to think about, how do I take advantage of that data that I have started to accumulate? Some of the, now that I've gathered that information, how do I get information back out of it? And the AI opportunity here, I think, is huge. I'd like to spend just a minute down that rabbit hole and see if we can get the audience involved here. What have you tried in this space? What are you struggling with? Give us a little bit of feedback here, and let's see if we can open this up and get Adam and Grace both sort of shooting you back some ideas about what you might do to improve in that domain. Adam, let's maybe start with you. Like, where are we seeing opportunities to start to get some of the AI in here?
Well, it's obviously an exciting and fast-moving time on that front, where if you're out roaming around on LinkedIn, if you're just checking the news, like there's a new product, there's new APIs, there are new versions of language models, there's new everywhere you turn. And I think we've seen some struggles for people to understand, okay, like how do we apply it? That's becoming easier now as people have started to understand how and where the technologies best fit. So you've seen a lot of demonstrations with like simple demonstrations where you use GPTs to just kind of get call and response answers, but pipelines and sort of like the research of how do you actually take that one step further to build a domain specific knowledge base to your processes and integrate that into your system. So I can pull data from a LIMS, some of my background documentation, experimental results, get them into a corpus of knowledge that I can query for insights, or to build new structured, data sets around things that have occurred to drive, scientific efforts moving forward. So what questions do we ask next, based on the data that we've received to improve, operational efficiency, scientific results and innovation.
And I think one of the important things that Adam, that you started to say there, notice we're not just talking about go to ChatGPT and type in a prompt trying to get some information back out of the base model. We're talking about pipelines and integrations and APIs again, and that puts us pretty squarely back in sort of what the low code space looks like and how do I get this into my laboratory fairly quickly. Grace, I know you guys have spent some time doing this for some of your client base, and you're not just using it as a, go end type of prompt, right?
Right. So if you look at, and there's a huge universe of tooling that's coming out. I look at the large LLMs like OpenAI, Gemini, Meta. I don't really look at Grok that much because why would you? But if you look at those, they're expanding. They're like expanding star universes. So, backward in 2023, you saw a lot of AI companies get a tremendous amount of funding at very high valuations, and they are now wiped off the map because these LLM stars are expanding so rapidly, they're just eating the tooling. So you have this concept of RAG, you'll hear these words, retrieval augmented generation, and vector databases, and there's some semblance of those that are starting to exist in the LLMs. But instead of waiting for a product to come out, what we know is that there is a structure by which you can mechanize and create security around how you interact with some of these large utility companies. How do you break it down from a tool that you need, because you need tools to interact with these LLMs. They don't do very good at things like days of weeks and time and calculations. You need all the way up to knowledge blocks and agents. You need to separate out the actual work that a component of the technology needs to do. So we look at it as a since we have a structure to break it down that falls within the frameworks of all these other products that are coming out, we can create that structure for a company, and that structure can be flexible to accommodate whatever happens next with the larger utilities, because we are all sort of swinging from whatever those utility companies do. And our evangelism is, hey, let's get started. We know we can make these improvements today. Let's do that. And in that way, every company starts to become familiar with the way it works. It's not a big mystery anymore. They can see some immediate results instead of, wait, I'm afraid it's not going to happen. And it is going to happen. And that's, we have done some interesting work with physicians that do expert witness testimony for lawsuits. And part of their practice is, maybe they produce 30 of these a month. They're highly profitable reports. The way they produce those reports is to take, say, 30 doctor visits, images, etc. They have a pretty specific manual process for conforming those to a summary view, and then they have a final process to approve everything. And they take 6 hours for a brain surgeon per month to produce a report like this. They would rather be hanging out with their children, but they know, that they have to be the ones to do it. That said, you can train an LLM. This is a perfect example. You can use the low-code platform to anonymize the information, make sure that it's respecting PII. You can bring that down to 35, 40 minutes to fine-tune a summary versus 6 hours. And the outcome is better. So these are like very real world things that can be done, and almost every business has them.
And you can do that with high security or high compliance kinds of information and environments You can do that with data that is specific to your organization, the best practices and the previous artifacts that you've produced. This starts to be an achievable set of technologies. And so I think one of the questions to every member of the audience here is go and think hard about, do I already have a lot of the data that would drive success in the next thing? I just don't know how to structure it yet. If you do have that, you're a pretty good candidate to be talking about this kind of AI integration, and it's not going to completely revolutionize your business. You're hearing Grace tell the story of, I can do the same thing, but faster. That's a better way to approach most of these things. Take the incremental gains where you can, get started on this, move your organization forward. And then as you've got some of these technologies integrated and you're more used to using them, and they have already ingested a good chunk of the information that's available, then you can think about what are the revolutionary applications, the things that would really let me change how I do business. It's hard to jump straight there if you haven't walked the path for a bit yet. And I think those sorts of integration stories are ones we would really love to be telling.
Yeah, and I just like everybody thinks, okay, this is going to cost $1 million. We are, what we
Doesn't
like
have to.
to do is look, give us a concept that you're exploring. Let us see, we can commit to delivering something in 30 days for $15,000. And that's sort of the round number of, and it's not like a finished product, but it's a proof point to say, okay, if you could do that in 30 days with this, I see how that could already save me 1 hour per human, whatever the numbers are. And then from there, you can decide, yes, this is worth the money, because it's all about a better quality of outcome. Am I freeing up more time to do things that I'd rather be doing either in my business or in my life? And can I see a path forward, a glide path forward, to have this be the starting point on which we can build, future expansion plans and optimization?
I like the approach of the the idea of taking small concepts, right, and building onto that. And I think that's one area where if we're talking about where and how can I apply these tools, where can I bring in AI, machine learning, to my processes of sort of exploring the data that you have, the data you don't, how well this integrates together. And like as Grace is saying, taking software packages are built to integrate and using those to sort of get to that next step and open up the opportunities in a safe and guarded way, so that you're taking it into consideration your regulatory concerns, your knowledge of the systems and protections. The concept that you hear talked about, like, is AI going to take over our jobs, right? Which, well, obviously we want it to automate them. The case study you talked about, Grace, there, right? We want to be able to reduce the time that we're spending on
Tedious.
the tedious tasks, right?
And this is about shifting what people do. It's not replacing, it's about moving the people to a higher level. But I think one of the other things that gets lost here is most AI systems just turn loose to do something, do an okay job. There's a really important human component that goes para-human with an AI, elevate both. You get better
It's
quality.
mandatory. It's mandatory. Like the people have to learn how to operate the machines. That's our job, right? So I look at people fearful of, oh, my job, I'm really good at this particular manual process. Well, guess what else you're probably good at? You're probably good at being a prompt engineer. You're probably really good at helping train AI to mechanize and do as good a job as you do and have everybody else that does a similar job to you do as good a job as you do. So this is where the jobs are just going to shift. It's many, developers are also threatened in part because AI is definitely writing a lot of code, and it's going to write a lot of code. Well, that position now shifts to, I now have to understand the actual business operations and the domains, and I have to get the technology closer to the business, which is great. It actually, for many, gives people a more expansive view of what they do for work, because they can now attach their code to an outcome. And it also gets them prepared for a phenomenal future, which is going to evolve until we all die, of using these new modern tools to make people's lives better, deliver better outcomes, and have a better quality.
And we're doing this internally and with our clients. We're starting to pair our programmers with an AI. The goal is not to get rid of the programmer. The goal is to make the programmer more productive. And it doesn't really matter who typed out the line of code. It matters that you are driving through to that goal, tying it back to a higher level business goal or objective that you've got in mind.
Can I do more, and can I do it better? Right. I still have to understand. I think this is great. I think this is something we'll see probably as a trend where people maybe like let that go too far, right? We let it write too much and nobody understands exactly what it did and it doesn't work right. There's that oversight, the human pairing that's so important. But when you have that in place, when you know how to, if you will, operate the machinery, what more can you do and how can you be more effective? That the reach is fascinating. It's really the next big sea change in technology that we're seeing sort of unfold in front of us.
Yeah, before the release of, ChatGPT and the whole explosion, we created a bot integrating Amazon Lex, Lambda, Connect, Kinesis with the Slingr platform to create a natural language processing bot that would answer phone calls and book appointments for orthopedic practices, which is very complicated because there's body parts, how old. Many orthopedics work at multiple locations, different hours of the day, what procedures they work on, which what body part, what side of the body, all of that. And it was very hard. And the miss that we had scoping it was that you absolutely have to have the interface that side by side shows you the call log, not only the transcript of the call log, but the actual voice log, so you can tell where the bot breaks down. So that human interface of making sure, especially in healthcare, that human interface of making sure the machine is doing what you want it to do is a big part of the project. And so having the ability to sort of integrate that, pull all the data sources in front of a human, so now your job, and so the Slingr application, the Yahara application becomes part of the machine. Your job is to run the machine. Your job is to make sure the machine's doing the right thing versus doing the actual work. You're teaching the machine how to do the work. And it's pretty interesting. We can actually operate a lot of things still operate through email. And now we don't have to stop that. We don't have to force people to log into an application. Just forward the email to the application. It's going to divine the tidy records that the system needs to create. It can consume responses to create tidy records. When you need to log in, you can, but you can still operate the way you want to. If it's through email, then you can keep operating through email. If you want to just attach spreadsheets, you can do that too. So it's really a way to give people a more expansive options to adopt technology than another app, no, now I'm a slave. I'm a data entry slave to the application, and it's pretty exciting.
I want to pivot this back to some of the laboratorians in our audience, and I think you called it out earlier, Grace. Just because you're a laboratorian and you are good at the scientific part of it does not make you a technologist that's good at some of these new technologies.
Nor do you want to be.
Nor do you necessarily want to be. And I think one of the things that we see folks struggling with here is, if you're not a technologist, it's not obvious how you're going to get off the ground. It's not obvious how you're going to get started with this stuff. So you just don't start. And what that means is you've got a lot of those data entry problems, record creation, basic, I just want to get an analysis that shows my trends over the last month or two for this assay. That's hard. There's not an obvious way to solve those things because you don't have the founding technological knowledge to do it. What we're talking about here is a class of solutions that lets a lot more people come into those kinds of domains and really start to be impactful and get information back out of your systems, do better integrations without needing to be a dyed-in-the-wool technologist spending all day every day thinking about new columns in your database, or how you're going to integrate to that API. You don't necessarily have to live at that level to get some of these benefits back out anymore. I am still hopeful that we might get a couple of folks to jump in and comment here. We would love to hear from you if you've got any questions. If not, we'll happily pivot from here and take just a minute to talk about some of the more regulated industry stuff. If you are dealing with sensitive information, patient data, if you are dealing with regulated information, medical devices, or whatever your particular manufacturing protocols might be, those domains feel especially scary to bring new technology into. One of the things I think I'd like to spend just a minute on here is, where are the opportunities to deal with that in a way that we make sure that you are still regulatory compliant, that you are still maintaining your reporting streams and your validations, and starting to get some of the advantages of the newer technologies, the faster pace of technology.
So I'll open that up by saying, just in the old days, and today, you have applications that come with a permission schema, and the permission schema is sort of applied to the application. It's sort of application specific. Since a low-code platform is literally designed to build anything, permission schemas are a feature, and that feature extends to anything else you ever add to the application. So if you wonder ever why it takes so long for a roadmap item that you want to occur in your packaged product, why it takes so long is they have a lot of things they have to go tick and tie and bring back together in order to apply that permission, that necessary permission schema to the new thing. So you can't just say, I want to add, hey, I'm a lab now, I want to sell croissants, but they're highly, secure data fields. In a low-code environment, you can say, well, let me add this data entity called croissants, and I will have permissions for every field, no problem. In a legacy software implementations, many times that foresight to have the flexibility to add new features and new data structures is not there. And so you are refactoring and refactoring, and most large legacy products can't do that very quickly. So picture that if you're looking for a feature like a toothpick, you would say the forest is a legacy platform that does everything. And then you've got to go into the forest, and you've got to figure out which of the trees you want to scale down to a toothpick. With a low-code platform, you'll go and say, what do I actually need? Out of the 100% of things I could have, what are the 5% of things that I need? I can build that faster with a low-code platform that has the baked-in API, has the baked-in permissions features, has the baked-in integrations framework and data orchestration is faster, more efficient, and more tuned to the actual requirements of a company. And so if, when we look at things like AI, which are new to us, it's an integration of another technology. We integrate already with 70 or 80. It takes us 3 or 4 days to add another integration. And all of those integrations are also covered by that permissions and security schema that makes sure that you're still in HIPAA compliance, type 2 compliance across your platform. So it is a different way to look at things. It's been the bane of my existence. We started the company in 2011 and trying to tell people, look, you know what? It might actually be faster for us to build this for you than it is for you to hire like a Salesforce.com configuration department to spend, 7 or 8 months configuring down. It's sometimes easier to build up.
And I think you called it out of like focus on the 5% that actually moves you forward. It loops back to some of the limbs stuff that I started the conversation with. If there's heavy overlap of what a big system like that is doing with what your laboratory needs, it's a great fit. If you're only using some tiny fraction of it, it comes with a huge overhead and burden that may be prohibiting you from moving. And if you can pivot that down and say, I only actually care about these integrations, that data, this business case, it's much easier to start to think about what your focused solutions are going to be. And I think that's where you see more of the integration approach, more of the, maybe I just need a little bit of custom or quick configuration to get to that place.
100%. And the sort of the larger the monolith, the more hostile the integration environment becomes. And so that's where the simplicity of, hey, these are the exact data entities I need, no more, no less. Many monoliths are designed from scratch to integrate with themselves. And that's why when you go say, in Salesforce, fabulous platform at sales automation, and then they added campaign management and ticketing and all this stuff. But then guess what happened? MailChimp came out and that campaign management was better than Salesforce, but since it was designed to integrate with itself, yes, there were connectors, but it was complicated. And then, guess what? Stripe billing came out. Like it worked better than the Salesforce connectors version of that. And so what we have is the ability now to create just precisely what you want quickly and efficiently and not expensively, and giving you a better, clean platform on which to innovate going forward.
Well, what we're seeing, what we're talking about, right? These big products, slow things. I mean, that's the opposite of what we need, right? We're looking to accelerate into innovation, not be, drugged down by what we have. And so really the choice is to look forward, look at how you can find these technologies to integrate, or else you will fall behind. Like we're losing pace in innovation that otherwise can be propelling us forward. And like, that I think we've seen sort of like the days of the monolith taper off over time. And I think the opportunity for these bespoke solutions to be done quickly, as you're talking about, Grace, it becomes the way that this is done going forward. And the tools are out there. We can start embracing them now. Be it a Slingr, being it a custom integration that you might, build on your own, based on, a module that's out there, a drag and drop type application. But the advantages that we might have to some of these tuned platforms for this type of integration, the compliance, the security, are things that you still can't replace with just a simple code, simple script that you might write at the bench.
Yeah, it's really interesting because we started Slingr before there was a word called low-code application platform. And I came at it with, as a founder, with this notion, and having always been attracted to technology, that there had to be a better way than spreadsheets. And there had to be a better life than people running the same macros every month, day in and day out. That made nobody happy because everybody was arguing with the math, and there was no consistency of forecasting results. And it became a very big challenge to turn people's attention to like build. It's not a dirty word anymore. And I'm older, right? So I've been in the word where if you in corporate, you're like, I want to do something custom, they would literally just shoot you in the head, like you're done. Because everybody has suffered a failure. In this last year, we have seen so many people who have tried a packaged product, approach, and they would have suffered with it if it worked at all. And it's finally gotten to the breaking point where it's becoming easy to have these conversations with people, and they're raising their hands and saying yes. And I'm excited about it because it is affordable. It does work better for the humans. It distributes technology instead of like a few big pods of NetSuites and Salesforces and Oracles. It really distributes technologies to the experts that have domain expertise that can actually help the businesses instead of just selling something somebody has to the businesses that may or may not actually work for them.
We're sneaking up on the end of about an hour here, so I'm going to pose one last question and ask for an answer from each of you, and then maybe we'll leave it there. And that is, for our laboratorian friends who've joined us today.
Wait, is laboratorian like a population that I don't know about? Are they a species?
The regulated lab aisles. I don't know. For our laboratorian friends who have joined us today, they want the advantages that we're talking about. They're interested, but they're feeling stuck. They don't have a clear path forward. What's the first step? How do you start to change the culture that says, I'll just buy the big monolith and it will solve all my problems, even though we kind of know it doesn't? Where do you go?
It starts with a conversation. And we have never had a client that didn't start with a conversation. And I will tell you that, these conversations aren't painful because we're actually not trying to sell you a thing. In a very short 30-minute conversation between Slingr, Yahara, a client, we can literally say, you know what, this is about what it's going to cost. This is about how long it's going to take. Sometimes people have assets they can send us, like the big fat spreadsheet, like documented workflows. If not, we take requirements on the back of a napkin. And we're not too far off because having a platform gives us some certainty of how long things are going to take, because we're not going to crash into some technical problem we haven't solved before. So it starts with a conversation, and then an understanding of where people want to start, like where they see is the best bang for their buck. And we never scope past 90 days because everything, once development starts, it changes, right? Once you're underway, everything past 90 days changes. So it starts like a 90-day general scope. This is about how much we think we can get done in 90 days. At 60 days, we decide, hey, you want to keep going at this pace, you want to go faster, you want to go slower. So it's very collaborative and conversational.
Yeah, I think it starts with a question, right? Like every intractable problem that we approach in science and in software, what do I need to do and why can't I do it? The great thing about where we are right now in technology is that there's so much mind share and effort going into, whether it's, LLMs or computer vision, traditional machine learning models, or wrangling the data that we're all collecting, faster than we can do anything with it and putting it together. People are looking at these problems. How do I solve this? How do I bring it all together? How do I interpret that data once it's together? Ask a technical friend, someone like Slingr, someone like Yahara, like your brother-in-law that's playing around with ChatGPT. What are the opportunities there? There are tons of open source software projects. There are services now that are out there that lets you, plug some of these APIs together like Legos that might be great for experimentation, right? To just understand what are the capabilities out there, because sometimes that's the hardest place to start. Is this even possible? Understanding the possibilities and, talking through the capabilities can lead you to some of these. Let's start small. Let's start with a problem that makes Monday better.
And a
And
problem that
build on
pays
it.
for itself, like where the
Mhm.
automation can pay for itself in a reasonable period of time. And that's, that's the tipping point for people. Okay, I need to automate because I'm going to spend too much money if I don't. And my costs are getting out of control. But the struggle, the challenge is always, how do we convince people that it's as easy as we say it is? And usually we can answer that question inside a 30-day engagement, and nobody ever looks back.
Mhm.
And I think that's the exclamation point. We're going to end it right there. If you want to ask Adam a question, if you want 30 minutes with Grace or her folks to start to talk about, could low code work for you? If you have reach back or questions or more topics you'd love to see in a future webinar, we want to hear from you. But thank you all so much for joining us today. We're happy that you were here. We hope that you have gotten something of value out of this. Ray, take us out.
Yeah, thank you all. Grace, James, Adam, fantastic presentation today. We've got your contact information up on the screen. Everybody that attended, thank you for joining us. We'll have a recording sent out to you soon. And once this wraps up, like I said earlier, there's going to be a survey that pops up. If you can fill that out, we'd greatly appreciate it. Everybody have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, Ray. Be good.
Thank you.